The times are changing. At the DNC yesterday, a different kind of speaker took the stage when a train derailment caused toxic vinyl chloride to spill in East Palestine, Ohio. John Russell, being from a small town in Ohio a short drive away, decided to cover a story in his own backyard. He used his platform on social media to tell the story of the derailment's impact from the perspective of the people who live in East Palestine. He's since dedicated his career to telling stories that matter most to working people, from Trump holding a rally near the site of UAW workers on strike, despite not being there in support of the workers or inviting them to the rally, to reporting on how billionaires are killing NASCAR. John Russell has used his voice for the working class, and that voice echoed through the convention hall at the DNC last night. Take a listen to labor reporter John Russell.
But populism that insists we are too different to get along, is just divide and conquer by a different name. There's another sort of populism with roots in this party that we in West Virginia know well. They called us rednecks back in the 1920s because striking workers from all different races wore red bandanas around their necks as they fought and died for respect and a living wage.
My friend John Russell joins us now to discuss. Thanks for coming on the show, John.
Thanks, Jessica. That's actually the first time I had hair and makeup. And fun fact, the mullet is now union strong. So the barbers in hair and makeup, they're unionized, and we're having a great time.
I did see Appalachia podcast post a photo of you and JD Vance and said these two guys from Appalachia spoke at the conferences, and I'm going to go with the one who was in Pearl Snaps. So it was beautiful. Can you speak to how you were received there at the DNC?
Yeah. I was glad to be there. I was glad that they saw the work that we're doing at More Perfect Union, which is really just about how working class people have been getting screwed by bad policies forever, and they gave that a platform at the DNC. And I wanted to bring a lot of the people that we meet on reporting trips in East Palestine, or union people joining the union for the first time in rural Tennessee, and try to lift those up on the stage and challenge this party to get its power from the organized working class and the labor movement that we see growing so much. So I was glad for that.
Yeah, we don't see mainstream media go out and talk to workers and ask what they think. It's usually, our politics is translated by DC consultants and Democratic or Republican strategists. But, you and I both go out in the field for More Perfect Union. I learned so much about the country, whether it was you were on the Warren campaign, I was on the Bernie campaign. We were knocking doors all across Iowa in 2020. We both had a lot of experiences where we learn about the country from being in it. Can you just speak to that a little bit and how you see this election with what you know from being on the ground?
Well, yeah, that's one of the great parts about the job. I wonder if you feel this way, but going to every pocket of the country and covering, ordinary working class people, their stories might be very different. We might be covering the corporate greed that caused East Palestine to be exposed to so many chemicals. In one instance, we might be covering a native tribe whose sacred land is on top of the biggest copper deposit in North America. Those are very different populations, but when you travel around and do this work, you start to realize that although people might be different in their circumstances, the principle of what they're fighting for is the same, which is, survival and respect and dignity in a world that for decades now, my adult life and back a couple of generations has been run by the richest people on earth, who are counting on exploiting those differences, surface level differences, and getting, working class people to, fear, mistrust, and hate each other. And you begin to realize that we're pointing fingers in the wrong directions a lot of the times, at each other instead of the wealthy people that run the world. So that work makes it really obvious. And I'd be remiss not to mention when I was speaking on stage at the DNC. Well, first of all, they the showrunners asked if I was going to go into wardrobe and get a wardrobe change, being a journalist and everything, but I decided to wear the pearl snap up there. But another thing that was on it was this melon pin here, and I wanted to say, speaking, this party really should have allowed representation from a Palestinian voice. And why I say that is, this needs to be a Big Tent party. It wants to represent everybody, and you don't win by running away from really tough issues or suppressing voices. You win by recognizing that the struggles of children in East Palestine, Ohio, wondering why they're dealing with chemical exposure, at the core of it are the same as a Palestinian child wondering why American bombs are falling on their family. We are all connected in a fight for survival, and I really wanted to challenge the party to rise to the scale of our problems. And that's what this was about. Didn't really show up on camera that much, but I wanted to say that.
So the head of the Teamsters spoke at the Republican National Convention. There is an effort in conservative circles to at least speak to working people in perhaps a cultural sense. I'm not sure I would say the policies are necessarily changing, although there's some in the GOP that would like to make the party more policy friendly to labor. What do you make of the efforts going on the other side that, frankly, are working on some level in terms of getting people who identify as blue collar, have a blue collar background, to identify culturally with the Republican Party, even as the policies don't change that much?
Yeah, I think we're being offered a fake version of populism from the other side, especially from J.D. Vance. I said in the speech that populism that amplifies our differences is nothing but another name for divide and conquer. If your brand of populism is relying on increasing the divisions between working people, then it's nothing but the age-old game that Republicans play so well. They talk about anything but what they're going to do materially for working class people, because at the end of the day, they're really not doing much. But for the longest time, we hadn't, at least from my perspective, had a real alternative to that. Part of what I wanted to lift up to the party was the chance right now to offer a real alternative to what the right is doing that is based in solidarity, and that my region of the country, Appalachia, knows well. We have a lot of muscle memory from the time when the only route that you had to fight for yourself was to join together, like black and white coal miners did 100 years ago, and fight the government and the coal mine companies that ran the entire state for a share of the wealth that you created. So, when the right is offering that to us, I think we need a strong alternative, and that's what the speech was about. Now,
I remember going off to Nebraska, meeting with a bunch of railroad union guys, and they talked about, the Democratic Party straying away from having workers be the focus. They see people, with a big D Democrat next to their name in Congress, fighting for policies that run counter to the needs of working people. And there's been this idea that policies that do right by regular American workers are these far left progressive communist policies rather than just common sense, what's best for the economy and what's best for the country. And it seems that the DNC, based on Waltz's vice presidential candidacy, based on Sean Fain being a huge part of the party, is kind of circling back and has found its way back home where the issues are exactly as I said. Common sense economic policy issues that do right by workers. Do you feel like you're seeing that change as well in the people you talk to at the DNC?
Well, I think we're at a crossroads at the DNC. It's always going to be the last place to get the news, as an organization that's fundamentally based in DC, at the heart of power and at the height of power. But being the last place to get the news, I would say that the news is starting to show up. I was happy to see so many strong labor voices up there. I was even pleasantly surprised with the Walz pick. I think politicians are, creatures of survival, and they're starting to take note, even by inviting someone who does work like I do onto the stage. I think they recognize it, but our problems are too big to wait around to make that decision any longer. I think we have been living in the hangover of the Clinton party. NAFTA hit my region of the country like a ton of bricks, and that is still a dirty word around there. And I think, not only would it be the right thing to do, but it would be good politics to return as far and fast to the labor roots of this party as possible. I talked about a lot of people that I come across in the work that I do are looking for a political home. And, they're not necessarily happy with either choice. And the folks who are speaking to that group of people right now are folks like Sean Fain. And the more notes that the party can take from leaders like that, I think would help their chances to win elections.
John Russell,
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me on.